Hi everyone and welcome to the live Nonprofit Pro webinar, Creating a Sustainable Future for Your Nonprofit, sponsored by GuideOne. My name is New T, Editor-in-Chief of Nonprofit Pro, and I'll be your host for today's event. But before we get started, let me take a second to point out the Tips for Attendees widget on your console. It's the blue one with the wrench on it. If you missed the tech tips video we played leading up to the webinar, you can always click this widget for more information. Also, we will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, and you can enter your questions for that at any time using the Q&A box on your console. With that said, let's meet our outstanding speakers. Efdu Kadad has extensive experience as a nonprofit practitioner, author, lecturer, and consultant. He has been contributing to Nonprofit Pro for over 10 years. He's been a long-standing member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, in which he was previously named the AFP Indiana Chapter Fundraising Executive of the Year, and has held a CFRA designation for many years. Currently, he serves as the Executive Director of Development for the Salvation Army Indiana Division. Pete Kimbus provides broad consulting services for nonprofits. He specializes in funding scans, grant research, grant proposal writing, appeals, and copywriting. He works with a team of the finest nonprofit professionals in service of both small community-based organizations and international nonprofits. He's experienced in fundraising, advocacy, and community outreach. He facilitates the cultivation of partnerships between clients in the business sector, grantors, community organizations, and government. So before I turn the mic over to our speakers, I wanted to talk to you guys a little more about today's topic. Nonprofit staff turnover is a real problem in our sector, which is why it's ever more important to practice good retention strategies. But the truth is that's easier said than done, isn't it? In the 2019 Nonprofit Leadership Impact Study, we questioned our audience to learn what their most pressing staff management challenges were. And here was the verdict: providing staff with fair compensation, not overworking staff members, and hiring and retaining high-quality staff members. In an industry where there is such a high turnover problem and a low resource problem, how can we provide staff members with fair compensation, not overwork them, and at the same time hire good quality staff members and retain them, especially during a time when we need bodies working inside of the organization? It seems like a vicious cycle, doesn't it? So this is why we're here today. Our esteemed speakers will share how we can recruit the right staff members in a tight job market and improve our retention rates at the same time. So without further ado, Duke, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Nu. So appreciate it very much. So proud to be part of this webinar today with Pete. And we're going to talk about recruitment, retention, some other things. So let's begin. One thing I like to talk about when I make presentations is the fact it's all about theory and it's all about practice. So I encourage everyone to always think of both things simultaneously. Think about your practices and your theories and then how they blend together for maximum effectiveness. So in the last year, what was your year like with respect to recruiting and retention? You realize in the nonprofit working world, there's at least 14 million workers that pay, and they're paid over $634 billion in wages. That means there's a lot of opportunities in the nonprofit world. In fact, research says anywhere from 1.5 million to 1.8 million nonprofits, and there's thousands of competition nonprofits in every state, as we all know. Last week, I was really amazed at the nonprofit national, it should be national, not just nonprofit, but all sectors, national unemployment rate. Do you believe it was 3.6%? And the average tenure of many development officers, as we all know, is typically measured in months, not in years. So according to the 2016 National Employment Practices Survey, the nonprofit sector at that time projected significant job growth, even though the private sector was stagnating a little bit. And the Career Builder survey said 57% of nonprofits anticipated making a new hire in 2016. Yet, 54% of nonprofits didn't have a formal recruitment strategy. 71% didn't even have a formal recruiting budget. So out there in listener land, How many of you have a strategy or a budget for recruiting? That's critical, and that's step one. You know, 3 things happened to me last year that is kind of amazing to me. I have a staff of 16 that report to me, and I've been in the field for many, many years. But just 3 quick examples. One, I had a grants person quit her job, and of course she quit during the busiest time of year. So after several months of a search for her replacement, a person accepted a written job offer. The next day she called and withdrew her name for consideration as she considered a counteroffer. So then I had to go back to the drawing board and search again. So another candidate accepted in writing the position. 4 days later, called, withdrew as she accepted a better offer from another employer. Luckily, on our advisory board, the chair reached out to me and said, have you thought of so-and-so? She would be a great fit. I contacted her. She wasn't even looking for a position, and behold, I have a new grants person. Also, last year, literally 15 months ago, a grants officer on my staff decides to retire. And because of this crazy market that we're in for recruiting and retention, et cetera, and a change in her job description, after 15 months of searching, we decided, ta-da, hire an in-house young candidate and train her. Why didn't we think of doing that 15 months earlier? What expense did we waste? I receive weekly calls from friends and associates, headhunters. The last time somebody called was yesterday, desperately needing qualified candidates. Where are these candidates? So let's look at the facts that we have facing us today. And if you look at slide 5, you'll see the facts. I don't know about you, but anytime there's a key job opening on the staff, it's painful and it's costly. And I mentioned to you earlier, research says significant job growth will continue in the nonprofit sector. Now, many of us really are not professionals in recruiting or retention or any of these things, but we need to learn those things. And I've learned over the years, HR departments truly cannot help you in many cases except for posting jobs. So many professionals, must all of a sudden think about recruiting in a different light and leave no rock unturned. A lot of us try to make a staff or fill in a replacement kind of a part-time priority. It needs to be full-time. And we all know it usually costs thousands of dollars to replace a key employee. You know, you can't effectively manage or succeed in this business without a full staff and a competent staff. Those relieve so many headaches for you. But when job openings occur, they provide you with additional stress, and all of a sudden, guess what? Somebody has to do their job when the job is vacant, and that's you. So recruiting and retention better be on your radar. You know, I constantly think about I call it private banks, but I always keep notes when I meet different people, and I write down potential prospects that I think job openings are on my staff, if there could occur, and I just keep lists of people. I keep contacts and resumes fresh. I actually keep an active file for potential openings. Not that I want openings to occur, but I want to be proactive in case openings occur. So even if I fill a position, I keep the resumes from the second or third or fourth place candidates because they may be interested in working for me at a later date. So as a practitioner manager, consultant, mentor, and educator, you know, I love to talk about HR recruiting and retention because it's a hobby of mine. I love getting people jobs or providing career advice to them because all I ask when I deal with people, and I hope you do too, is pay it forward with others. So now you have a job opening. What are you going to do? If you look at slide 6, you'll see when recruiting, according to Recruiting Times, obviously don't fill a position just because you need a position filled. Search for talent and think about avenues of going after talent. When you look at potential job openings, look at your prospects, look at your job description, and look at your prospect's experience and try to match the two. You're trying to get the best person in the job. I mean, if you're an athletic coach, you're trying to get the best athlete to do the job. And like I said earlier, painfully, look at in-house candidates first. It's much easier to train. They understand the culture, they understand situations, and they want to be hungry. And they will pay dividends for you. Contact your peer network. If you're a great employer and you have employees out there, they'll help you recruit because other people will ask them, what about you? What about your organization? There's always formal networks and there's always informal networks. And we know how both networks work. And don't discard the fact about checking employees' references, because I've had situations where I was getting ready to hire two different people at two different times. And on a Saturday night, a board member called me and said, hey, I understand you're considering so-and-so for a position and you're ready to hire the position. Here's information you didn't know. And thank goodness I did not know that until they told me. And then recently, we had that job interview I told you we filled with an in-house candidate. Well, I talked to a candidate, and they kept saying, well, there's something I want to tell you, but I can't tell you right now. Man, so many red flags went up. That was amazing to me. So, again, just be careful. So the point I'm making is, when you're recruiting, take a deep breath, figure out what to do. So what I try to do when I have an opening in recruiting is I try to make a list of potential activities needed that posted on the job description in various job boards like Indeed.com, LinkedIn, and AFP. Hopefully you're involved in the Association of Fundraising Professionals because they have job boards. And in some states, like Indiana, where I'm from, they have what's called charitable advisors, and they list jobs constantly. Look at trade associations, because you can always look at nonprofit field, but you can also look at the business field, government field, and other fields for talent. You're looking for people that can do the job, and hopefully they have crossover experience for the job. Look at social media, look at employee referrals, look at past employees, look at friends and like groups. So just get a whiteboard, so to speak, and write down all these different places you can search. Also, for example, when I had a Plan Giving opening, I contacted like the Plan Giving Society. I also contacted colleagues that I've known for many years that know people. I contacted consultants. They're a great wealth to be contacted with, because when you deal with consultants, they know about job openings long before they're open. That's their job. Talk to advisors, talk to mentors that you have, and hopefully you're smart enough to have mentees. Also, talk to universities. Many have career plan and placement centers. I talk to deans at schools of philanthropy. I talk to board members of nonprofits. I also talk to major philanthropists because they know people that might exist out there where there's crossover experience. Chamber leaders, United Way leaders, community foundation leaders, Chronicle of Education, former employees that you had, I mentioned, former bosses, recruiters, and other possibilities. The degree of your deep dive, think about that, depends on your job needing to be filled. So if you really need help, and all of a sudden all those places I just told you can't help you, then you may have to turn to professionals that do recruitment for a living. And those are, according to IQ Partners Executive Search, the 5 different types of recruiters. So one is a contingency recruiter, and that means when a job candidate gets hired, the recruiter gets paid. And that's how it works for them. Or a retained recruiter. That retained recruiter has an exclusive relationship with an employer. They're hired for a specific period of time to find a candidate for a job, many times senior level positions. Or you can deal with corporate recruiters. These work in-house with a company, usually a large company, but they work with their HR department, and they're paid a salary and benefits just like any other employee. Or you may have for a period of time a temporary contract staffing agency, or if you have to, you may have to find somebody out there that you can put in the position for a temporary time period, or outpatient agency. If you lose your job and downsized by your company, you may be referred to an outplacement agency. That takes place all the time. And they can teach you so many things about how to get a job, maintain a job, how to interview for a job, how to write a cover letter. That's an art. Truly it is. So whatever you do or how you do it, especially in a tight job market, Make it easy for a candidate to apply when you're recruiting. That's critically important. Also, constantly make your employees feel special and ask them to be part of the recruiting process and the interview process. They can seek out and they can give you ideas and thoughts you may not have. Also, you have a unique organization culture with prospective employees. Be proud of that culture and tell them and show them why your organization is different. You have to do that. What separates you from any other organization that need that candidate? I said this earlier, but I really mean it. You got to work harder at recruiting because it's going to be a full-time job until you fill that position. Work on positive retention programs, and Pete will talk about that in a second. Seek to offer within your organization growth programs. Network all the time, especially when you need employees. Promote your organization with peers at all times. And stress why your organization, when you work for an organization, somebody asked me one time, why do I work for the organization that I work for? And I'm executive director of development with the Salvation Army. And I told them flat out, this was the calling. One thing that drives me crazy when I'm interviewing people for jobs, and they always fail. 9 out of 10 times they fail, or even more than that. I ask them an easy question. Why did you consider my organization? And what do you know about my organization? And I am shocked at the response I get when I ask prospective candidates that want this job. They interviewed for the job. They applied for the job. They know nothing about the organization. I want to be blown away, even if you don't know the right answers, that you care enough about the job and what's the mission of our organization. They don't know the mission of the organization. Point is, many people need a job, but they just shotgun instead of rifle. And if you really want a job, show the person that you're interviewing with that you know the organization to the best of your ability, that you spent time recruiting, and it's a passion of yours. And it's got to be a passion of yours if you're looking for a job. Recruiting is not easy in this economy. It's very, very difficult. And you really have to think out of the box and just be on top of your game with recruiting. So at this point, Pete, I'm going to throw it to you to talk about retention.
Thanks, Duke. Very, very happy to be here, and thanks for your insight on that. And I especially love your very insightful point about having a formal recruitment plan and also a budget and be prepared in advance. My name is Pete Kimbus. I'm an independent nonprofit consultant, and I've worked with over 50 nonprofits just within the past 2 years as a board member, direct employee, as a volunteer, and as most notably as a consultant. So I want to make this engaging and give you an experience. And the way I want to do this is to ask you, most notably, are we looking at this clearly? So the main thing that we're looking at is turnover. And are we sure that that's the right question to ask? So I know I've turned over pies, I've turned over pizzas, haven't turned over a car yet. I'm not that strong. But these are all inanimate objects. They're not people. So one thing I want to stress that I'm going to come back to a lot is stepping back, taking a breath, like Duke said, and reframing and saying, are we asking the right questions? Because this is happening in every organization. It's not a new problem. It's not even necessarily a problem. It happens all the time. So through every market, whether it's a recession, whether the economy is good, whether it's 2% unemployment or 10% unemployment, like Duke said, you better have that plan. And also, we have to be able to adapt to change. And one thing that I think that we can change is internally, our internal culture. So my passion is culture, fundraising and culture. My education, formal education, is in culture and politics. So I think when we see that we have an open position, a key position that needs to be filled, it should be kind of a red flag to stop and check ourselves. Time for an evaluation. If we're asking how do we fill this position, the way I see it, that's objectification of people. And we're all people, and we all should be treated as an end, not a means to an end. We shouldn't be trying to fill a slot. We should be trying, in my opinion, to grow culture, to improve culture. So I'm going to move on here. To reference a past talk that was given and put on by Nonprofit Pro, Nina Love, who works with After School Matters, spoke about different categories of employees. I'll just say people. And she broke them down into 3 groups. Those who are passionate and mission-driven, and perhaps more passionate and mission-driven than they really need to be. These are the people that actively work. They might have a 40-hour-a-week job, but they work 60 or 70. And more often than not, they get burned out eventually. B, those who are going through the motions. They're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're not driven. C, those who maybe not willfully, but they're somehow blocking the organization from achieving the mission. So I think in the recruitment, the retention process, category A is extremely important in that we want to attract, not only attract in Group A, but identify the people who are already in our organization, like Duke said, who are part of that group, who are mission-driven, who are giving it their all, and create a reward system that treats them with dignity and respect. So how do we do that? So I'm going to ask you a thought experiment. This can be kind of funny. So take a second and think of a recent experience that was very, very enjoyable. And if you can, send in the comment, if you can, like access to the platform, some of the qualities of this very enjoyable experience. And I can almost guarantee you with absolute certainty that that experience was time limited, and it was with friends or loved ones or someone you really care about, and there was an element of trust, a big element of trust. It might have been jumping out of a plane, skydiving. You're trusting the instructor. It might have been, regardless of the experience, it was time limited, filled with trust, and offered a unique opportunity. So that's another theme I want to come back to, because we can't offer the dollars that for-profit corporations can. That's something that we agree on. We're limited. So we can offer something better. And this is a scientific study. One of the most notable physicists of today, Carlo Rovelli, describes the world as one of experiences and not things. The universe is about experiences, not things, and that's what people value the most. So we can offer them something even more. Financial compensation is extremely important, but we can offer them something that goes beyond the dollar. So, and sometimes, I just switched here, Daniel Kahneman I adore. He's a behavioral economist. He studies and talks about human behavior. And the quote I have here is, we can be blind to the obvious, and we're also blind to our blindness. So once again, stepping back and looking at our organization and seeing if there is an opportunity for growth. I think seeing a position being vacant as a problem is a mistake. Or even if it's not a mistake, it's not going to help you if you see it as something to be fixed. It can be approached more from the standpoint of, okay, let's look at what we've got here. How can we improve our culture I'm going to give you some concrete ideas of some things that you can do. So in terms of offering an experience, one suggestion I have that might be it's definitely counterintuitive and countercultural is when you're hiring people, tell them we only expect you to work for us for 2 years. Why do I say that? Time limited. It puts more of a value on that experience. It also makes it unique. Anything that is time limited is valuable. It is scarce. So you're creating a scarcity. And you're also letting people know, hey, listen, we know you are more than our organization. And this can't be just talk. You really have to put this in action. If it's only words, it's not going to work. But if you hire people, say, listen, we expect you to stay, or we would like you to stay 2 years. We don't expect you to stay longer than that. How do we make this experience the best experience it can be? And, Daniel Kahneman, the economist I referenced earlier, he makes solid points about how experiences start and how they end is extremely important. We forget a lot of the details in between. There's a lot of good stuff that happens between the start and finish of any relationship. So how do we begin it, and how do we end it, and how do we see the ending? So by doing this time-limited experiment, it is very helpful. It also reduces a sense of control, of obligation, gives people autonomy, and lets them know that we realize that you have more of a life than this right now. So what matters to you? How can we make this a better experience? And one idea is, listen, after 5 months, we want you to take 3 days. And I would say Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and reflect on your experience here. And reflecting on your experience here, like deeply and honestly, and come back and compare, and we'll compare notes. This, gives people the chance to think about, and it gives them a voice. Because sometimes things fester, and in that group A, the people who are so mission-driven and really care about the organization, care about the mission, and honestly, folks, that's why they're there. That's why they're at your organization. They need to be treasured. They are valuable. So, and there's a quote here from, I've been reading Jennifer Harris last week, and she speaks a lot about how that group A, mission-driven people, how they can be burned out. And her quote here, a lot of her stuff is quotable, but right here, I am seeing still a chaos cycle that strips the passion and purpose out of our work. I'm seeing our philanthropic charge, our benevolence, our love of humankind raised dismantled in many ways. All of this has led me to the specific inquiry. When an institution is strained and faced with uncertainty, when a storm tunnel of unknowns fly like a debris around the eye of a tornado, who do you choose to be? So, I'm going to reference someone else here, a great teacher of mine, Tara Brock, who is a teacher, author, instructor. I'm lucky and blessed. She lives very close by to where I live here in Maryland. She told a story the other day about intention and attention. It was from a teacher of hers. What is our intention, and where are we giving our attention? And like Duke said earlier, having a recruitment plan, and then also having a plan, a concrete plan of culture. How do we develop culture? How do we foster a better experience for our staff, for our people? And that should be written down. So, and you know what? You guys are included in this too. You deserve the best experience you can have. So, some ideas of some concrete things, and you can always reach out to me later and you can provide my information, but everything varies based on by your organization, by your people, and you really should get to know each one, meet with them, figure out what makes them tick, and have a plan to, as I would say, like graduate them. Find out what skills they need for their next position. And don't ask them like how long can you commit to us, but based on this 2-year commitment, how can we help you move on to the next level? What's your dream job? Whether it's with a different organization, even if it's with a competitor, it does not matter. What skills do you need to get there? And we'll help you do that. And once again, you got to live this through. You got to see it through. It can't just be talk, because then it backfires. Couple things that you can do, in addition to like those reflection periods. I mean, there's all sorts of ideas, but canines are huge. Being able to bring your dog to work, that's something a lot of organizations do. Partnerships with other schools, other nonprofits. I worked for an organization and was able to bring in a massage therapist who was studying, also a yoga instructor, and she gave tremendous value, and employees were able to get massages and yoga instruction during the day. So I just want to kind of bring this back to the more general concept I'm trying to get across, is that this is not necessarily a problem. Treating people like individuals, giving them an experience, that's what we can give them. We can give them an experience. And it's quote here by Frank Herbert, "Without new experiences, something inside of us sleeps. The sleeper must awaken." And here, I love these images here because most notably, the middle one is my youngest daughter, and I figured that at this point in the presentation, I would just love to see your face. So, top left, Teach for America. Bottom right, Peace Corps. What do they have in common? Time limited. They basically pay below minimum wage or minimum wage, yet people can't wait to work for them. It's a very competitive, they're very competitive organizations to get into. And why do people want to work for them? Because to bring it full circle, they provide the experience. Having the beginning start well of their experience with your organization, and when they leave. So the beginning and the endings are so important. Developing that trust is another, once again, it's another key word that I'm going to use, because I think by focusing on culture, focusing on making people comfortable, focusing on making them understand and truly know and believe, because it is true that you have their best interests at heart. You want to help them have that experience. You want them to move on beyond you. You know that they have futures. You know that they have a life. It can foster that sense of trust where maybe you won't be left in the lurch. Maybe you won't have that vacancy. You might have 4 or 5 months ahead of time where you know, because they have that confidence and knowledge that they might approach you, or or when during one of those review sessions, they might, give you a heads up. Listen, I'm looking for something else. Like, it might not be working out, and you can have a plan in place on how to make that transition. Ending is so important, because when someone leaves and it's not a good experience, that's the worst, because that's what they remember, and that's what they pass along to colleagues. So I don't know about you guys, but if I'm looking for a job, I ask my peers. And I ask them, what do you think about this organization or that organization? And if what they remember was something bad because it ended badly, or if they left suddenly, I'm probably not going to get that organization is probably not going to get a good review. So creating scarcity, once again, in terms of it's almost like a privilege to work for the organization. And that's done by creating the right group of people by recruiting the passionate, mission-driven people, treating those people right, giving them the experience that they want, treating them with dignity, and knowing, not trying to control them, so empowering them. And I threw in the Human Rights Watch image here because just to speak about that, about memory. So I applied for a volunteer position with Human Rights Watch. I want to say it's about 15 years ago, and I couldn't get I couldn't give them free labor because people were dying to work for them, to volunteer for no compensation. So that told me something. I'm like, wow, this must be a phenomenal organization to work with. And that was my primary interaction with them, but I still remember. It made a lasting impression. So I think if you are able to, and this takes time, but creating the right team, giving people a voice, creating that culture, creating that trust, that is an experience that you can offer, and it will lead to less burnout, less pressure, more enjoyment, more collaboration, fun, purpose, and clearly. One other thing, I wanted to mention is that so often we don't realize the impact we're having. So it doesn't matter if someone is cleaning the floors or if they're in fundraising or major gifts, or it does not matter. Letting them know what kind of impact they have had in real numbers as much as you can. So if we're giving our all, and if we're one of those people that, we're hired for a 40-hour work week, but we're working 60, 65 hours, letting that person know, if I let you know, listen, hey, I just want to let you know that over the past 3 months or 4 months, you have impacted the lives of 120 people, or you have reduced carbon emissions in your own way by this percentage, or you have planted this many trees by what you do, by your contribution, regardless of department. Because the way I see it, we're all equals, and I think if we can approach our work like that, there is no hierarchy. I mean, clearly there are protocols to follow, but realizing that every person counts and every person makes a difference and helps. Ideally, if you have the right team, every person is furthering, progress towards the goal and helping the mission of the organization. So in real terms, why are we working for less money? There's a reason. We want that mission we're very passionate about that mission. So if I'm working and working and working and working and working and working and I never really know my impact, that's a problem. For direct care people who are giving direct service, they have a better idea, but if you are, let's say, working in membership of an organization, you might not know the impact you're having, but you kind of need to know because you're there for a reason. You're there because of your passion. So part of what you can do is letting that individual know in concrete terms, you've done something really big. You've made a difference, and it's not just talk. This is how you've made a difference. So it takes time, it takes trust, worth it. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to add right now. I think I've pretty much covered everything, but the key concepts that I just want to get across is it really a problem? I mean, I don't think so. I think every problem is actually corresponds with a much larger opportunity and something to be grateful for. So stepping back, analyze. Is this really a problem? Is it really about this person? Is it really about Joe or Jane? I doubt it, because every organization has Joe or Jane. And focusing on that, I think you're missing the mark. Stepping back, evaluating your culture, building it, connecting with people, finding out what matters to them, treating them as an end in themselves, not as a means to do anything in particular, but only to make their lives better. I don't know about you, but when people try to make my life better, I try to make their life better. So yeah, trust, communication. And as Duke said, in terms of recruiting, put this into a plan that your team agrees on and make sure they know about it. And start now. Don't delay. It takes time. Sometimes it's incremental growth that really makes that shift, but start now. Take immediate action. If this is something that it's that critical for you to tune in and to listen to me talk about this, then I'm guessing it is an issue. So start now. Take what you will from what I've said, but never underestimate the power of culture, and I would say never overestimate the way you see things, because our brains are limited and we're never going to see the full picture ever, but we'll definitely have a much clearer idea of what's going on if we communicate on a regular basis and have that level of trust. So, New, how are we doing on time?
We're doing excellent. We have about 20 minutes now for questions. And I know we want to make this as interactive as possible. And I appreciate your insights, Duke and Pete. You gave us a lot to think about in regards to recruiting and retention. And Pete, I love it so much what you said about not just filling a job slot, but creating and developing a culture of people who are motivated, who are passionate, who are mission driven. I think that's one of the key takeaways for today. So with that said, let's dive into some questions. And if you have a question, don't forget there's a Q&A box down below, so enter your question there and we'll get to them as soon as we can. All right. So the first question I want to touch base on is, Duke, maybe you can talk on this because you've worked in a number of different kinds of organizations. How can nonprofits keep employees engaged in a small organization with limited resources?
Well, I think the first piece is hiring correctly. And as Pete said, and you alluded to it, you have limited resources, so you want to make the best hire possible. And Pete put a 2-year time window on it, which is great, but still, sometimes you want people to work as long as they want to work, because they're going to be happier because they're setting the tone, especially in smaller organizations. You have to hire correctly, because if the chemistry is wrong in a small group, that poisons the whole group. So when I hire somebody, I'm looking for, as you all said, passion for the mission, leadership potential. They need to know the knowledge of the position, and especially in a small group, they really need to know the history of the organization. If they can talk to former employees, what are they walking into, and what's their expectations? You've also mentioned communication skills and motivation, but the intangibles in a small shop, you got to do everything. So you really have to work beyond the job description and be willing to work beyond the job description. And I always look for attitude. If somebody's positive, to me, effort. I mean, you're going to make mistakes, but effort is everything. Trust is everything. And many times when I go into a new staff situation, I'll say, this first meeting, I just have 2 words for you and the organization: exceed expectations. So the bottom line is, when you're working with a small group in a small firm, just be ready to be a super generalist and understand you have to learn every aspect of the job, because you're going to be called on to do everything in the things you didn't even expect to do. So you just have to be really, really on top of your game, but be collegial.
Awesome. Hey, Pete, do you have any other insights to add to that?
And could you rephrase the question for me again, New?
Yeah, definitely. How can nonprofit How can nonprofits keep employees engaged when they are a small organization with limited resources?
Engaged, I think so much depends on voice. Being able to speak out and not get shot down. So I love brainstorming, and I think something that we can often miss is, we shoot down someone's idea, and that already creates a sense of discomfort and a lack of willingness to share in the future. So like being able to provide that voice keeps people engaged, because if they never have that outlet, I mean, it could be 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, and someone has bottled up stuff that they're not happy about. They might still be there. They might be out the door in one, and you never know why. So that constant back and flow of communication, and everyone counts the same, and, trying to get rid, very genuinely get rid of that fear of retribution, of speaking out. And as we all know, in our culture especially, some groups are not encouraged, they're not raised to speak up, and I'm referring to gender. So we kind of, have to take a different approach in trying to empower everybody. Oftentimes I go into groups and the men just can't stop talking, and they talk over everybody else, and it doesn't create the space. So I would say always making sure that leadership creates the space for everyone to talk. Sometimes it's just a matter of a few seconds. Holding off 3 or 4 seconds more before, trying to make your point allows the space for someone else to talk and get ideas out there, maybe get frustrations out there, whatever it is, and be part of that mission. Because once again, like Duke said, we all want people who know about the mission, know about the organization, care about the organization, care about the mission, because they wouldn't be with the organization otherwise. And giving them that say is vital to keeping them engaged. Don't shoot down their ideas. Give it fair weight. Give it fair consideration. It makes a really big difference, because people want to be valued. And once again, it's the experience you're giving them, because you're not giving them the money. What can you give them? You can give them perks, but ultimately you give them a voice in helping that your organization achieve your mission or pursue it. And that matters the most. That's the way I see it.
Great. So a question just came in that kind of flows into this. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it, Pete. The question is, what type of non-monetary incentives can you give employees to keep them interested? But also, what are your thoughts on non-monetary incentives?
I think they're key. I think they're great. And I think that should be part of the plan and part of the discussion, because different people will have different needs. I've heard of organizations coming up with innovative ways to provide childcare for other staff members. There are, it really depends on the organization, and I think there's obviously no one thing fits every organization. I'm happy to compile a list that I can send out or give to you, Nu, of some very specific things that I feel are valuable or people might value. But there are a lot of ideas. But I guess to go back to the point is, they really should be coming from the team, because although there are needs that everyone has that are human needs, they vary from location to location, from industry to industry. If I'm working for an arts organization, arts might be very important to me. So tickets to, very affordable tickets, or just providing the time for a person to attend a cultural event. I guess another organization, it might be something different. But education, opportunities for growth, and titles is another one. Because, like, what have you got to lose by giving someone a better title, especially if they're working really, really hard? Don't, I would say don't give them a crummy title. It means a lot. It gives them more self-respect. It invests them more in the organization. I'm not saying overinflate the title, but make it respectable. Like, I can't imagine people want to go around and, like, have a conversation at a party or get together and say, oh, I'm an admin. That's not exciting. That's not fun. It kind of takes away someone's dignity. Nothing wrong with the work. It's important work, so give it the proper due. Those are a couple of ideas, and I'm happy to send out some more.
Yeah, that's
well,
awesome.
Pete, one thing that you
Yeah.
said I really liked was talking to people, talking to your employees, and get to know them. I try to at least, I have constant one-on-one meetings with my people, but it's not always about business. So I try to, as you said earlier, learn about them, learn about their background, whatever they want to share with you. But you can ferret out will motivate them, will excite them. And it's even little things. I had a meeting today with a large group where I celebrated some successes some people had, and we had some cake and donuts and whatever. And then another time I gave certificates out to people. Anyway, we can talk about that for hours, but the bottom line is, if you feel like if you're a good boss and you really support your people and you care about them, some people will go through the wall for you, as long as those employees feel like you're supporting them and you're backing them.
Yeah, that's a great point, Duke. You shared some really creative examples, and I think this might be an article for Nonprofit Pro in the
I think that's
well, we've had some recently on retention and recruitment.
Yeah, definitely. So keep an eye out, guys. All right, so the next question, Duke, I mean, you've written on this on Nonprofit Pro, I'm assuming multiple times. But what are your thoughts on executive transition and the impact on the organization? Best practices, any warnings?
Well, I've seen a lot of negative executive transitions, because one thing in our profession that I'm disappointed with is transitions. Many times they don't exist, or you have no authority or responsibility to affect a transition. I'll give you an example. For me, I've been involved heavily in capital campaigns throughout my career. Well, I recently had a candid conversation with my boss, and I said, hey, I need to be more focused in capital campaigns, and I would like you to consider promoting my number two, who I've tried to transition for the last year. She's our director of planned giving, into my executive role, because she's more than ready for it. And so we did. And so we actually had an advisory board meeting today, literally about an hour and a half ago, where my boss announced the transition over the staff, promoted her in title, etc. So she's going to manage the staff now. She's happy as a clam. Everybody loves her, and they're happy for her. It really made it feel good with the employees that she's, after 6.5 years, she's going to manage the staff. At the same time, I'm extremely proud of her. She's been a mentee of mine, and that worked. The point is, you need to, if you're not the CEO of the organization, but you're the CEO of the development department, you need to work hand in hand with the CEO of the organization to determine how best to groom somebody behind you, if possible. Because many cases, unfortunately, that's just not possible. When you have a new CEO in place, many times they want their own person, and they won't allow, even if you had a transition plan in place, they won't allow it to take root. So it's a very complex question, New, but again, if I was in an organization, in fact, I have an article coming out this week about it. I was the number two in an organization for many years, and all of a sudden, I won the number one job, and they actually hired a recruiting firm to hire somebody from the outside. Well, lo and behold, I got the job on the inside, which is an upset. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but most organizations have to have a transition program in place. And really, you have to think about every position in your organization. What happens if you leave?
And also to add on to that, once again, put it in the plan. You know, even the Duke's, you know, what he was speaking about, how this person was recognized, that should be put in the plan, because from what I've seen too, like, so there's often a lot of fragmentation between the board of directors, the executive director, and the staff. There isn't a whole lot of face time. So if there is a document that can be referenced, so, you know, no one's feelings get hurt, like people don't feel like it's protocol and procedure that is part of the organizational documented culture, so it makes sense and there is a guide to how to do it.
Awesome. All right, Pete, I have a question for you. It's a retention question. This person's asking, would you recommend stay interviews with Category A employees? If so, what questions or goals should there be for such a conversation?
It's a great question. Great question. Once again, I think focusing on the goals of that person, like where they want to be, what they want to do, and I know I keep coming back to a lot of the same concepts, but ultimately, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be complicated, and sometimes keeping it simple is the best. So finding out what they want to do, where they want to be, and like I said, if they're planning on just identifying what they want to do and how can I help you get there, and what can I do to, and often, you know, the person might not know. So this doesn't specifically go towards that question, but even broader, helping that person find a mentor that might be even outside of the organization or within. It really doesn't matter, but really making sure that you are helping that person do what they want to do, become what they want to become, because everyone wants growth, as far as I know. You know, most people at least. They want growth, they want freedom, some degree of freedom, they want some degree of, you know, autonomy, of mission, of purpose, and helping them do that through communication and proactive measures to identify what they want, and then following through with your word, and following through with respect, and, you know, kind of eliminating that sense, that the viewpoint of hierarchy. So even though there is a hierarchy, everyone counts the same. So, and probably the same things you want, that person probably has, like, you know, maybe not the exact same goals or things that they want to do, but the same human needs are there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So it looks like we're just at about a time for today. So on behalf of Nonprofit Pro and GuideOne, I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. So be sure to check out the webinar page to get information on all of our archived and upcoming webinars. And if you would just take a minute to fill out the brief feedback survey that will appear on your screen next, we would be very grateful. Your feedback will influence the webinars we will bring to you in the future. So with that, I hope to see you guys on the next Nonprofit Pro webinar. Have a great day.